You'll let me know.
I skidded in.
I seen you come in. Shame on you.
And then Mark was
Oh, no.
some really big pieces out
I'll show you.
Lions meeting.
That's the Santa Fe lady behind you. I know her voice. I'm probably getting closer.
I had a question, just so you know. Oh, so we've never done it before. That was always Mary's, but now it's under the city's, and I only know that the city and I don't know if that is separated from somewhere, so I have not used that much inventory. Because there was never anything that didn't pass, and so I didn't know where, so actually, it's probably the next one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now, you gotta.
Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as written? Let's call the meeting to order first. Now,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as slated.
I'll approve that. I'll second that motion.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
You want to read the minutes?
I can give it a try. For May 9th, called the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. and approval of the agenda. It was mentioned we needed to add number 3 as the Recreation Commission, Terry Minson. Motion by Jerry to approve the agenda with the addition of number 3 as the Recreation Commission, and second by Scott. All were in favor. Approval of the minutes from March 7th meeting and the meetings were next on the agenda. Motion was made by Wendy to approve the minutes and seconded by Scott. All were in favor. Approval of payroll and April financials would need to be done later as those items were not available. Terry Menson asked for monetary donation to the Recreation Commission, and the motion was approved by Wendy, seconded by Jerry. All were in favor. He mentioned he's stepping down from his position. They are looking for a new individual for this position. Public input, Cheryl Everhart addressed the group on the recall and on the needs of the city to pull together All this only divides us further. Tina Peterson would like a heads up when utility bills go out or get pulled out of ACH accounts, it was noted. Discussion was then on to the city pool. It was noted Pools Plus would be coming May 17th to get things up and running. Approval of pool management was discussed and Mimi Craig was agreed to. Motion made by Wendy, second by Mary. All in approval. Assistant manager was to be Jen Orr. Certification of lifeguards was discussed and motion was made by Jerry for the city to pay for their certification. Second by Scott, all were in favor. It was also mentioned if the guard quits or does not pass, they will be responsible for the certification. Wages were also discussed, new guards at $8 per hour, experienced guards at $10 per hour, Mimi Craig at 12, and assistant manager at 11. It was motioned by Scott to pay accordingly and second by Mary. All were in favor. Vending machines were discussed for the pool and will be investigated as an alternative. Approval of the 2023 audit findings were next on the agenda. Motion was made by Jerry to approve the 2023 audit and second by Mary. All were in favor. It was mentioned that we would all be in favor of utilizing Scott Lloyd to help move ARPA funds and to assist with investments in the future. NA software contract with Anita Gertson was on the agenda. Rhonda noted that this is a definite need for the new city clerk. Mary made the motion and Scott second. All were in favor. Approval of city appointments. Clerk will be Morgan. Jerry motioned and second by Scott to appoint Morgan. All were in favor. Treasurer Mary Jane Lauer, motion to appoint by Jerry and second by Scott. All were in favor. Maintenance supervisor Nick Miller, motion by Scott, second by Jerry. All were in favor. Chief of Police Mark Barnett, motion by Jerry, second by Scott. All were in favor. New city attorney Reese Hebert will be the new attorney, motion by Scott, second by Jerry. All were in favor. City Judge Gary Price, motion by Scott, second by Jerry. All were in favor. The city clerk was next on the agenda and Morgan was in attendance and introduced to all. She'll be starting May 13th. Summer mowing help was noted by Nick Miller that the full-time mower would be Christopher Lemon at $10 per hour and Dustin Frank at part-time at $10 per hour. This was motioned by Scott and second by Jerry to hire these individuals based on Nick's presentation. All were in favor. Department reports. Chief of Police noted he had 41 incidents. He also mentioned he would be getting new cameras at the pool, not to exceed $700. The motion was made by Jerry to approve new cameras, not to exceed $700, and second by Scott. All were in favor. Nick with maintenance noted the roof on the back shed needed new tin, so keep that in mind going forward. Rural Water District number 4 was discussed and options for being dependent upon were slim, as proposal from Rural Water 4 was around $2.85 million. This will continue to be investigated and discussed as Rural Water number 4 will continue to look for avenues to see what additional ideas could be discussed. Nick mentioned if all went well, he would be taking his water and sewer test June 21st. Replacing the current dump truck was also discussed, as Nick had been watching one on a bid site. Nothing would be pursued until Nick and another member of the city could take a trip to look it over. Jerry discussed Shiloh. It was mentioned that a possible auction might be in place. Also, the need was there for removal of any unusable items. May 21st was an upcoming election. 3 booths and 3 tables were requested for this in the community room. Motion made by Scott and second by Jerry to adjourn the meeting. Next meeting would be Thursday, June 13th.
Very good, thank you.
Ready?
Yes, sir. Mr. Scott, can you just go right ahead?
Got the casual version.
We're going to discuss
I hope that's okay.
budget for next year.
I've been in Pratt all day, in Pratt County. need like probably 7 or 8 extra copies if someone wants to share or look at what I'm going through. Whoops. I'm just gonna lay in my chair. I'm just gonna lay in my chair. I think she wants one. Whoever else wants to share. Okay. Been budgeting all day, and we're gonna budget tonight. The way this is laid out, I'm sorry, I had ran into a couple complications, so you only see the number, several pages on the bottom of the page is what I'm following. But there's only the odd numbers on there, so you gotta work a little bit tonight to figure out what the even numbers are, okay? Okay, so the way we do this, and I haven't done this one here for a long time. Jan Mildy, who used to work for me at SJHL for 32 years, she's the one that came over a lot. But we've been doing the budget since 1986, and then I think for a couple years you went maybe to someone else. So I'm just going to go through here. There's no dumb questions, and I think what's going to have to happen here, I'm just going to be very honest with you. We may not get everything settled tonight because you had a lot of questions the last time, or there was things brought up. And what I wanted to do tonight is show you some of those things that we could do. And then I think it's probably like, we probably want to have like maybe what's called a work session, where we go through and actually put numbers in once you kind of see what the big picture is. You put numbers in the way that you want it. So like Scott's already talked to me a little bit about the streets, and I think a lot of people maybe want to talk about streets, and just other things that I've noticed when I went through here, okay? So I've got notes all over the place. If you've got questions, please ask. I don't want to overwhelm anybody with these numbers. So on the front, it's a summary page. We make this up, and the one thing you have to remember, we do not have I don't think, unless we got it today, the assessed value from McPherson County. Have they sent you anything yet?
I think I
Okay, got it today. Okay. If it has the value on it, then we won't be able to put it in tonight, but we can at least tell you how much difference that'll make, okay? So on this front page, what we do is we put the 24 at the very top there. That I'm going to try to just go through this very simply. We put this at the top. The 24 budget is the first column there at the top. And last year, you had the, make sure I'm doing this right. I think they put yeah, so you had the mill levy set at 50.733. So I'm just going to go down that 24 column first. The assessed value from last year was $4,596,952. So how that works is when you get the total assessed value, you take the decimal point 3 points to the left, okay? So 1 mil at the city of Canton until we get the new value is $4,596, okay, or 97. And then the next down is the revenue neutral rate. So some of you that are new to budgeting, the revenue neutral rate is something the state's put on, and the easiest way to explain that is the tax dollars from last year going into this year do not change for the revenue neutral rate. So they lock, okay? So that 233,000 of tax dollars at the bottom there, they lock in, okay? When the new assessed value comes in, if it goes up, the assessed value goes up, the mill levy goes down, okay? Dollars don't change. If the assessed value goes down, the mill levy goes up, okay? And that's how they get the revenue neutral rate. And the legislators of the state want to do that because they want to keep the taxes from going up, okay? But I don't agree with the revenue neutral rate. I've done this for 41 years, and I don't think it's really. Some of the taxpayers may not want more taxes. I don't want more taxes over in Gallatin Main Street, but you've got to keep things going also. And I think I told you this maybe last time, I don't remember, but you think about it, how much, even at home, you've seen this, if you don't have any increases in taxes and your costs on the bottom side go up, So let's just start back at 2020, and let's just round it off at 5%, okay? And it was probably 7 back then, but 5% in 20, 5% in 21, 5% in 22, 5% in 23, 5% in 24, and now we're doing the 25 budget, okay? So there's 6 times 5 is 30%. And we have no increase here, but the cost goes like this. And it's the same at home. And that's why I look at this. I try to keep budgeting simple. It's no different than what you have at home. Receipts, you always be conservative when you budget receipts for a government. And it's just like at home. If you said at home, I'm going to bring home $5,000 this month, combined income, and you budget for $5,000, but you only bring $4,000 home, and you spend at $5,000, what happens? You either have to go to the bank, credit cards, or borrow from somebody. And a government can't borrow on credit line or operational type expenses. So the next part we'll talk about here is the cash balances and why. I talked a little bit about that last time, why the cash balances are important, okay? So did you happen to find, did they send it?
I just saw it. I printed a few. It was just the city in general and then the
Motor vehicle.
level,
Do what?
the levy.
Just the motor vehicle.
There's something about it.
I don't know if McPherson County has it yet. There's only a couple counties I've had so far that have it. They're waiting to what's called certify it. So the county clerk has to certify what the appraiser has put in the system, okay? And once she is certified, that's when she sends it out. Marion County hadn't sent theirs out yet. I did Lehigh last night, and so we may not have it yet. I mean, I'm not thinking it's going to go up a lot, okay? Because what's happened is it's kind of flat. The assessed value is kind of flattened out a little bit, and the state assessed, I guess, today I was talking to Pratt, it hadn't went up. The state assessed, and that applies to everybody, okay? Okay, so we got the taxes figured out, and once we find the assessed value out, 1 mil, instead of being 4,596, like I said, might be 4,650, okay? I mean, we don't know that yet. And then for every mil, which is the 50, you multiply that increase, so that's how much taxes you get because of the mill increase, okay? And we'll talk about that more later. The bottom part of this is the cash balances just of a few funds, like the general fund, special equipment, water, sewer, and trash. And I just show these as examples, okay? So if you look, the total expenditures, and I may have covered this a little bit last time because I saw Scott's, I did it on your audit report, Scott's sheet there.
For cities, and then there's a school, and then there's water vehicles. Yeah.
Okay, hold on here just a minute. Thank you. Oh yeah, this is for 24 budgets.
The motor vehicle says 25.
Yeah, motor vehicle, we did have that, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably not, yeah, this would be what you need, but it's just, this would be for last year. But
Okay.
yeah, okay. Okay, so the reason I want to do this before I jump in the budget, I want to show you again, so that we kind of keep talking about this, how important cash, unencumbered cash is, okay? So if you look at the general fund and just follow it across that line, you had total expenditures in 23 of the 527,809. Your monthly expenditures on the general fund were 43,984. So if we take 6 months of that, and I think I explained this last time, but we'll do it again. My dad was a banker, and he was full credit cards, so he said, Scott, when you get out of college, you got to make sure you have 3 to 6 months of emergency money, because hot water heater goes out, whatever, okay? So about 20 years ago, I started applying this to government because it really works well for a city and a county, okay? Because you can't borrow. So what this means is if we take 6 months, that 263,905 is the reserve of 6 months, okay? So the reason I'm doing this, there's a couple reasons. How much extra do you have that would be, what could potentially be called idle funds? I talked about it last time, and you had it in minutes about the interest income, okay? So what this means is the total cash, you go to the next number, 456,394, and you subtract that from what the 6-month reserve is. So that last number, that 192,489, is what would be left over of a 6-month reserve for the general fund, okay? And that's what I've done on every one of these. And then what I show you, I'm not going to go through every one like that, but what I show you is down below there, 604,979 in that last column in the total with the bold around it. That would be the amount of over the 3-month and 6-month of all these funds I've listed here, and you have a few other funds. Why that's important is, let's just say that's about half of your cash reserves, okay, in total. And if you took that times 4%, which I have down there, and I say 4%, that's $24,199 if it's at 4%. And if you remember when we talked last time, I think you were getting on your checking 1.2, 1 point, something like that, okay? So the way this works is if the bankers don't give you that, what's called the 90-day T-bill rate, you can use that for leverage. So I just looked, I haven't looked this week, but I think last week it was 5.33, okay? So 5.33 minus whatever you're getting is the amount, and I just use 4% just as a round number, but that's $24,000. And what I did is I divide that by the $4,597. That's 5.26 mils that you're not getting because of the interest income. You see what I'm saying? Because I do that, I look at, whether you look at expenditure or you look at an income item on the budget, divide it by $4,597, because that tells you how many mills that equates to. And that may not, most people that listen to that may not be that big deal, but that is a big deal. Because if they've got you at a 49 revenue neutral rate mill levy, anything above that, you have to have that revenue neutral hearing, you have to go, it's a big deal. So that right there would bring you in 5 more mills, and it wouldn't be a tax mill. It'd be, I'm going to be point blank with you. I told Jeff Warren, I said, I took my hat off as a CPA, and I said, I'm a taxpayer on South Main of 4 acres and house and 2 buildings, and that 4% in Galva was $80,000 that we weren't getting. So, and bankers don't like to, I'm just being honest with you, bankers don't like to give that rate, because what happens is that spread that you're not getting is going to them when they make a loan at 8% or 7%. So what it does is when you go to 5.5, or I think we got 4.75 you get us over there, which is not totally to the 5.5%, but it's still a lot better than what it was. It's 0.95 there. That money goes in the bank account and it doesn't cost the taxpayers. And so that's huge. And every budget I've been doing, I've been trying to tell people to do that. Now, the Fed just said they're going to keep it where it's at, okay? And they may have 1 reduction by the end of the year. So I doubt it, because who knows? Election year, and also we're a lot worse off than they're admitting. Okay, and I don't mean that negative. I'm just saying there's some challenges in the economy. Okay, so do you understand what I'm not going to go through any more of that, but do you understand what I'm trying to show here? Is that we figure out, we could get a 6-month CD, and I even told Smolin, little town Smolin, I was helping her. She's 85. She's a city clerk. She's a pistol. Okay, and she went to the banker and said, I need my rate. And I give her a sheet of paper, and she went there and she got it on her $150,000. It was extra money. And I think sometimes, bankers are not going to tell you that, and I don't mean that bad about any bankers. I'm just saying, because they got to make money too. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of the big picture of where you're at, okay? The next page, which is page 2, which you don't have numbered page 2, this is what's called the certificate. Now I'm going to go in pretty good detail here. Is that okay? So you all know how the budget works? Okay. If I'm going too much detail, you let me know. If you get glassy-eyed and fall out of your chair, I know I went too far, okay? So what their certificate is, it's really nothing that you have to worry about. It's when, that front page is when everything's done on the budget. This is how the county clerk sets your mill levy, okay? okay? So you see that right-hand column, it says final tax rate, county clerk's use only. So when we're all done with the budget, we've had the budget hearings, even the revenue neutral rate hearing, and then the budget hearing, and we turn it in to the county clerk. She has 2 copies. She puts this down the side of what the mill levy is, because what happens is this assessed value that we'll end up getting for 2025's budget, probably in the next couple days, is estimated. And it's estimated at June 15th, okay? So once it's estimated, we can figure the budget on it, but the final assessed value doesn't come out till October 1st. So, and it even says November 1st here, but that circle right down that column on the right-hand side, there's no value there yet. That's what the clerk will put in on October 1st to the 15th usually of what the final value is. And that could be like, they could have errors in it as they finish looking through it, or there could be a correction of some type. And then right below it is the revenue neutral rate that we just already talked about. So this is just a summary page. The next page, page 3 on yours, I believe, is the motor vehicle. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here, but what happens here is you get motor vehicle numbers, and it actually spreads it through the 2 levy funds. Right now, you have 2 levy funds. You have a general fund, and you have a debt service fund. That's the only 2 that have a tax levy on them, that have ad valorem tax, which would go get your house, go get some business, whatever, wherever that is. Okay, so we won't spend any more time there. The next page would be page 4. This is a scheduled transfer, and what this is, we do this kind of towards the end of the budget process. As we go through the budget process and we figure out how much tax we're going to levy or how much income is going to come into each of the funds, we will see what kind of money maybe we need to move from the utility fund to the general fund, or from the general fund to special equipment fund. And if we decide to put a capital improvement fund in, like we were talking the last time I was here, then we can actually start a capital improvement fund and show a transfer here from general to capital improvement, okay? Or you could also take it from the utilities to capital improvement. And that's something we'll talk about if that's something you're interested in, okay? Because I think that's pretty important that you set one up, because money's getting tighter and we have to kind of put it back and show it. I like the fact that it gives transparency to all the citizens. So if they wanted to ask, what's my budget and what's this all mean, literally that Excel spreadsheet I think I showed you last time, you actually give them that one sheet, and here's our capital improvement plan. And the way the statute reads is that it has to be a 5-year plan, and I've interpreted plan, I'm not an attorney, but I've interpreted plan as a 5-year Excel spreadsheet, okay, because that is the plan. That's how things will be played out. So we will, once we get done the budget, we'll fill this schedule out to show how the money was moved from each of them. This next one's pretty interesting. This is the debt schedule. And I hadn't seen this earlier. I was going through this when I got back here from Pratt. And you have one, the Geo Bond Series 2014 is paid off this year. So what that means, I've got it circled over there at the right. It's $25,000, and I also noted it down at the bottom. $25,000 of principal and $725 of interest. So what that means is you have that available to put somewhere else. Okay. Now I don't know if there's any other debt you're looking at right now, or if there's any other things going on with that. But right now you would have $25,725, and I'll show you what I mean when we get to the debt service fund. Okay. But that means you have right at that almost 6 mils, a little over 6 mils that we can move other places, okay, if we have to. The other 2 are 33 and 32, so they've got a ways to go yet. But one thing good about this is your interest rates. If you see my circle there on the top part, they're anywhere from 1 to 3.25 to 4, so they're pretty reasonable. And what you always look at with debt like that is you look and say, okay, here's my debt. Do I want to pay it off early? If you want to, and it's more on lease purchases probably than it is this kind of debt. But you can pay it off because, or not pay it off in this situation, because you actually can earn more. If you get the interest rates right, you can earn more than what the debt is. okay? Now in COVID, you were earning like point nothing and, you know, and debt. So it just kind of depends where the interest rate's at, but that shows that. And then the next one down there, the Kansas water pollution, that's another almost 18,000, and that will be paid off in 26. So that one had been going for 22 years, okay? So that one will be paid off in 26, and that's another. See, these are good things, you know? This debt that has been sitting here for a while, we can reallocate it or use it, that money that we should be using for those principal and interest payments, to use it in other ways. So there's two on here that were, one this year and then one in 2 years that'll be paid off, okay? Just stop me, I'm just, it's kind of like you just punch a button up here and I just stand here to talk about budgeting, okay? Okay, the next page is lease purchases. And this would be like if you decided, I think you brought up the dump truck that you were looking at, or that Nick was looking at. So if you bought it with cash, that's great. But if they wanted to, like what Galva did when they used to have the sand streets before they got concrete, they would actually pay their grader payment out of special highway, okay? And if they did a lease purchase. So special highway, and we'll talk about this in a minute, can only be used for street expense. Well, equipment for street can be used that way, okay? It can either be equipment or it can be for the actual street. And so some people will borrow to get like either a backhoe or that in the rate environment when it's lower. Now, the last one I just saw at Ottawa County I was working on a couple days ago, their last grader lease purchase was 5.25. So that's a hard one to look at because you're paying 5.25 and you can earn maybe not quite 5. See, that you have to kind of look at that rate. And if you got the cash, you know, maybe you want to go on and not lease purchase, okay? But that, you don't have any lease purchase, which is great if you can do that. They've got 13 graders in Ottawa County at $1.4 million in debt, okay? So each government is different, and that's really got them, you know, strangled because they have to figure out how to pay those payments. Okay, the next page. I didn't number my page. What page? 7. Okay. See, I did this so quick. I didn't put on my. Okay. So 7 is the general fund, and you, like I showed you up front, the general fund you want it to be the most healthy fund you have, because the way the statute's set up, you can actually pay anything out of the general fund. If you want to pay your principal and interest, if you want to pay even your water expenses, I mean, you could run everything out of the general fund if you want to, but you don't, because you want to see like what the water make, if it makes money. You want to see if the trash, you want to see if sewer, you know, just those different ones. You want to make sure that they're. So general fund has a lot going on here. I'm just going to highlight a couple things. So you see my circles up there at the top in the receipt side. Remember what I said earlier. You always try to be conservative with your receipts. Now, whoever did this budget last year was really tight with them, okay? So like if you look at, you got the first line there, you got $115,981 in sales tax in 23, okay? And in those other two columns, there was 24 that was brought over, it was budgeted at $113,000. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but I like to give a little more leeway than that. So that I always say cash is king, you know, budget doesn't get you anywhere, but you can have all the budget you want, but if you have no cash, it's just like at home, I said, you know, you can't use it. Then the next one is 1% sales tax on streets. So that was $77,365. And so while we're talking about that, let's just hold your finger there, and I'll have to number these so I can get them straight. But if you look back to it would be page 9, and you'll see what happens with that roughly 80,000 of 1% sales tax. You see there where it says transfer, I've got it circled, okay? So the way the streets work right now is it starts in the general fund as a 1% sales tax, okay? Then over here on page 9, it says transfer to special highway fund of 80,000. So they just rounded it off, okay? Then, to find the last place it ends up is look at 10, 11, page 11. At the top, you have the special highway fund. So there's that 80,000 that started over the general fund, transferred over to special highway, and it's in there with what's called the state of Kansas gas tax. And what that is the fuel tax that comes to you as a city, that 18,461 or 18,000, whatever it'll be this year. That comes from you for the fuel tax off of all fuel sales. It's based on an allocation across the state of Kansas, okay? And so you get 18 for that and 80,000 from that sales tax that transfers from general. So you have total resources for your special highway fund of right at $100,000. So that was the question Scott asked me earlier. How much do we have going towards the streets, okay, in income? And it'll be sales tax up to 1% and your state fuel tax, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so with that fund, when it's back, and then we'll jump back to the general, but in this special highway fund, it can only be used for streets, okay, or equipment, okay? And we'll get into it a little more. I'll show you some more things here when we get back there. And then that next circle, going back to page 7, the next circle down is franchise fees. And that would be like Evergy, the gas company, any kind of sales that may have cell service here, any kind of franchise agreement you've got. So one of the questions I always ask here, because I'm not sure, and I haven't talked to Linda for a little while, but I was going to ask her a couple of questions because she would know the history of it. But what this needs to be done is probably every 1 to 2 years, probably every 2 years for sure, you revisit those franchise agreements. Because those franchise agreements generate sometimes, see, you can see right there, they generate $30,270. And that's getting close to almost 7 mils, okay? That's quite a bit of money. Now, some people say, well, that's not really any different than getting ad valorem tax, because you're getting ad valorem tax on your house, and if we switch it to franchise tax, we're getting franchise tax on our bill from all the utility companies. You see what I'm saying? So it's a tax either way, but it's a different tax because it probably covers some different people. I don't know. But that's the way I always tell them to revisit those at least every 2 years, probably every year. Like you can have a lot of cities will have like what's called kind of like in counties, have a reorganization meeting first or second week in January. And they have a list of things that they go through, and these are the 22 things that we look at every January to make sure they're updated. You see what I'm saying? And it's a good way, and some, like with ordinances and resolutions, they will actually have the resolution or ordinance like for rates on water, on sewer, on trash. They will actually have those built in where there's, with the rate environment we got right now with inflation, they'll actually have those built in where their rate goes up at 3% or 4%, whatever that rate is that you choose every year automatically, so you don't forget it. So like I think I told you the story last time, Pratt City hadn't raised their electric rates in 12 years, and they raised them 21% in 1 year. Well, that's pretty tough on, people, citizens. And at the end of the budget season, their water was so low in the rate, it was in the bottom 25% of the state of Kansas, they raised it 48% over a 4-year period, 12% a year, 48%. And back to that thing I was telling you, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it, as flat as possible, and still have your expenditures. Does that make sense?